Democrats continue to harp on corporations for not doing enough to help the little guy. Chuck Schumer, Bernie Sanders now teaming up in an effort to try to limit corporate stock buybacks. While Republicans are all fired up, the battle between socialism and capitalism, however, is not a new concept. In fact, just ask former President Herbert Hoover, who was criticized over 85 years ago for not making good on a serious campaign promise to put a chicken in every pot, in a car, in every garage. Back with us now, Doug Schoen and DeRoy Murdoch. Joining us from D.C., Independent Women's Forum fellow and Heritage Foundation senior writer Kelsey Harkness. Kelsey, let me start with you. Not sure that Hoover was promoting socialism or democratic socialism, but he was saying that vote for me and I'll make sure that you get a whole lot of stuff. And of course, he didn't deliver on that promise.
Right. Politicians need to be very careful when they go out and make campaign promises that they can't keep. I think that's one of the reasons Trump continues to have so much support among his base, because he is actually one of those rare politicians who is doing what he told us he would do. I think it's very alarming, the high number of young Americans saying they have favorable views on socialism. I think we really need to press them to define what socialism really means. I think we need to ask why they're not learning what socialism really is in their public schools. And if you have a conversation with them, they constantly are citing countries like Denmark, like Sweden, but they need to realize that these are not socialist countries. These are countries with capitalist economies and just big social welfare programs that, by the way, are very costly to the middle class.
Doug, is that why some of the elder statesmen and stateswomen of the Democratic Party pushing back a little bit on the AOCs and the Elizabeth Warrens of the party, understanding that you can make these promises, but maybe one day you'll be unlucky enough to have to make them come true?
Well, and there's one other thing, if we can be honest here today, Charles.
Please.
Okay. Who gives the campaign contributions, after all? The rich. It wouldn't really make sense for me to say, Charles, I want to increase your taxes, and by the way, can I get $5,000, $10,000, $15,000 or more in donations? It just is kind of...
So how do you explain the rich? You know, this morning I was on FNC and I talked about Ken Gillette. He wrote this book called The Human Drift.
Right.
It's a great book on, if you want to know how to build a socialist utopia. But he was one of the richest people in the world at the time. Or the current folks who are billionaires who seem to promote this stuff. I mean, how do they, it seems to conflict.
Well, look, as I think you and DeRoy are people of goodwill who want to provide benefits to people. The problem is we've moved away from a mixed economy and a social safety net to the state doing everything and basically equality of outcomes rather than equality of opportunity. It's a change in our mindset, and I think it's very harmful.
Although it is sweeping the nation. It's hard to deny it's not sweeping the nation.
No, I don't deny it.
And I think these folks who just sort of dismiss it out of hand are missing big time to work.
Agree.
Yeah, well, there are two things. It's amazing to me that AOC, as we now call her, it's a lot easier than saying her full name. 29 years old. She's basically running the Democrat Party. I've described her as a one-woman Democrat National Committee, and she comes up with a wacky idea, and the whole Democrat Party says, yeah, that's great, let's do that. And the timing on this is so odd. If the economy were sliding down the toilet, I could see people saying, well, let's get away from capitalism, let's do socialism. But we're at a time now where the economy is booming. The last 2 months have seen 300,000 or so jobs added to the economy. As you pointed out earlier, black, Hispanic, minority unemployment at record lows, et cetera. Capitalism is booming right now in this country, and yet you have people saying, let's not have more of that, let's go in the other direction and embrace socialism. Very, very odd situation.
So, Kelsey, where do you see this taking us? Because it's hard to deny the numbers of Fox poll, recent Fox poll saying 70% of people were okay. Hey, yeah, we should be taxing the rich, and they should be, quote unquote, paying their fair share.
I think we, again, really need to communicate the message that taxing the rich isn't going to pay for all these free programs that Democrats like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez are out there promising. The idea is that
what did they say to you, Kelsey? Okay, you know what? You guys didn't say that when it came time to bail out the banks. You know, when the banks drove the country into a ditch and they needed a massive bailout, Congress got together, they suspended the presidential election, everyone went down and they voted for a massive bailout for the banks, and then the Fed bought $4.5 trillion worth of junk from their balance sheets. Why does the money always materialize for the wealthy? What do you say to someone?
Well, members of Congress in Washington, D.C. shouldn't have been bailing out companies to begin with. That isn't how a capitalist system is supposed to work. If these companies are failing, let them fail. And I think this was really corruption when you have members of Congress from Washington, D.C. Subsidizing businesses that aren't doing well.
Yeah, but the point is, though, the die has been cast, though, Doug, and people are looking over and over again. We're in the middle of another earnings season. I think we've had 3 in a row where corporate America has made $2 trillion. So $6 trillion in the last 3 quarters of last year. People are saying, I'm doing pretty good, to DeRoy's point, but golly, maybe I could be doing a little better. Maybe they should share a little bit more with me.
Well, the gap, Charles, that you're alluding to, income inequality, is getting bigger and bigger. Since the Democrats depend on principally lower income voters as their core constituency, they are seeing that wage stagnation has hit them, that cohort, rather than upper income people. And I think that's one of the reasons.
But DeRoy, is the answer to tax the wealthy, to change your economic circumstances, or to do something, create more opportunities at the economic backdrop?
Correct. I think, unfortunately, the Democrats' conversation tends to be about how can we punish the rich and bring them down rather than bring the poor up. The focus should be this conversation, which is productive. This conversation is very negative and destructive.
All right, Doug, DeRoy, thank you very much.
Charles, always a pleasure.
Thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you.